The oil giants are holding a fire sale for their old redundant petrol stations in the rush to try to establish themselves in the new lucrative EV charging market. I'm Dave. Welcome to Dave Takes It On. Shell put up 1,000 old petrol stations for sale while embarking on a massive new 500 EV installations for charging stations. BP announces the largest EV hub they've ever installed. Is this real or just greenwashing? Well, I seem to remember the last major news from Shell was that they were looking, besides their profits, they were looking for a potential buyer for their EV division as they concentrated on making maximum profits from oil, specifically by cutting production to put up prices. Well, you petrolheads out there, you live in a monopoly-controlled world. In fact, OPEC actually meets regularly to fix the price of oil. The word cartel springs to mind. Well, BP, with their BP Pulse, had almost given up installing their own EV chargers, and they were rapidly slipping down into decline. Well, I know many of you will now shout, no, what about the hub they've just installed? Massive hub at the NEC, with 30 ultra-rapid chargers and 150 fast chargers. But, to quote the BBC, the hub at the NEC, said to be the largest of its type in the UK, has been funded by private investment. They quote also, the project has been developed by a three-way collaboration between the NEC, EV Network and BP Pulse, the latter of which is operator. They also quote, the EV Network as investor for this multi-million-pound project designed, developed and constructed the EV charging gigahub. After signing a long-term contract with the NEC to bring EV charging infrastructure to the entire campus, working with BP Pulse on several projects launched throughout 2023. That's a bit of a different picture. Sounds very much to me that others paid for the installation and BP gets paid to operate them. Hardly a massive investment in EV charging. But what about the Kettering hub? Well, EVN, who funded NEC, also claim Kettering hub as one of their list. Once again, BP looks like it's not actually putting in any money of its own. And when they do, they claim, for example, they're going to invest 400 million over the next 10 years. But for an oil giant, that's puny. That's a tiny investment, particularly as the oil industry, including BP, is likely to invest over 1 trillion in new oil research by 2030. But tiny or not, the investment is beaten hands down by the investment GridServe recently received by a green fund. Well, Apple Green also is joining in, but there it's slightly possible it's a different slant on it. Apple Green set up a new EV charging company, Apple Green Electric, funded by a well-established and very rich green investment fund to pay for their ventures. It really does raise the question as to who actually runs and buys and owns something. And if I head to supermarkets like Tesco, in a recent visit I launched looking into what the supermarkets are doing about EV charging, I found contradictory data. One source would say Tesla partner with Podpoint, which I've seen for myself, while another said they're going to be installing new Tesla V4 chargers. Well, closer research discovers both are true. You see, Tesco do not buy, build and run all of their own stores. Some are funded. They're designed and built by REITs, REITs, Real Estate and Investment Trusts. These are just investment organisations that persuades investors, you and me, to invest my savings into one or more of their funds. And when enough of us have done so, they invest those funds in a real estate investment property, which could be a supermarket like Tesco, which will simply come along and rent the finished store from them for obviously quite an attractive rental. The profits from this are then invested back into the fund, and that becomes the return for their investors. That comes to a shock to many people. Tesco do not own their own stores. But it shouldn't. Take British Rail. Certainly isn't British, certainly has been sold off. Out of 30 franchises, only 6 are either owned by wholly British companies or the UK government. The rest are all foreign. Very nearly, including the Chinese, who very narrowly lost a bidding process to run our trains. It was won in the end by Italian Railways, Avanti, owned by the Italian government. Majority is shared between the Dutch and the French, each owning 7, and the Germans can only manage a mere 4 franchises themselves. Sorry, we're getting off the subject. Back to a UK EV charging. Hang on, is it? See, the largest in the UK for rapid charging is Instabolt, a British company, but it's owned by EQT Infrastructure, which is an investment structure, and it has its headquarters in Sweden. Well, second largest is Tesla. That's an American company, but they've got no pretending to be based in the UK. But once again, back to the oil giants. Why are they so heavily involved? Well, the International Energy Agency, and it should come as no surprise to you, this is actually French, is an international body that works with all energy producers, suppliers, and users around the world, has a massive experts who use their knowledge to write complicated reports on all things to do with energy, more importantly, what is likely to happen in the future. And all those reports indicate, as far as oil is concerned, it's already a dead industry. Although oil producers closely guard the actual state of their oil fields and remaining supply levels, all seem to agree that oil passed its peak about 2 or 3 years ago. It would have been very much sooner, but of course we had the 2008 property crash, which hit world economies really hard and dramatically reduced our consumption of almost everything. And then 2020 we had the pandemic, which did stop very much nearer everything, especially oil and petroleum product consumption, from which we have scarcely recovered. Well, in the oil industry, they do have to plan many years, even decades in advance. You cannot suddenly discover a new oil field by accident and begin producing tomorrow. So these oil giants, they're lumbering beasts. It takes an awful lot to get them heading in a new direction, which they're doing. But equally, it takes even longer to stop that and find another direction. Well, the beast is clearly heading to, but not yet anywhere near, a very healthy and profitable new home in EV charging. But don't think for 1 minute it's happy. It was actually really happy back where it came from. It had been there simply ages, it knew it all, and it prospered greatly. It really did not want to discover that prosperity and happiness were really short-lived, and if they hadn't made the move, it might have signalled the end, the extinction of their species. So, reluctantly they began to move, and along the way there were those shouting out, "Are we there yet?" While the elders simply shrugged and said, "No, not yet, but still an awful long way, but it'll be worth it when you get there, I promise you." And I believe they're right. It is a shock to the system, one they would have preferred not to have to make, but as they recognised it, it was for the very survival. Had they carried on, they would have been wiped out. Now again, all you petrol heads and EV haters out there, you'll call this rubbish. Look at their profits. Look at their new drillings in the Arctic. Look at all the hundreds of millions of petrol cars on the road. That's not going to disappear tomorrow. EVs will. But I say to them, it's a bit like driving off a cliff. Oh no, please don't try this at home, if you have a cliff at home, that is. You see, the first bit is quite normal. You're driving along quite happily, not a care in the world. You get to a bend where, unseen by you, there was previously a really heavy shower of rain. The road is actually flooded. You turn the wheel, but the car aquaplanes and carries straight on. Now, that end came really suddenly, almost instantly, totally out the blue. You've driven hundreds of thousands of miles before, totally safely. But of course, the end's not quite here. You're still in your car. The first 50 feet is actually quite exciting. You're still sitting there comfortably, you're listening to your radio comfortably, you're warm and cosy comfortably. But things aren't right. And then you begin to fall. As slowly at first, then quicker and quicker and quicker, till the final end arrives really abruptly. This is what Shell, BP, Exxon, Esso and all the others have seen, with the benefit of masses of expert advice which you don't have. Their end is near, really near, but they definitely don't want you to know it. If you ever found out, oh, perish the thought, you would stop buying petrol cars and switch to EVs instantly. So they definitely want you to find out till they're ready, totally prepared for whatever it is that they're going to sell you next and force you to switch to. Well, in the meantime, they spread lies and rumours, misinformation, disinformation. There is a difference between those two. To keep you in order, to keep you buying their old products. Well, it's exactly like the Osborne Effect. Now, for those who don't know, Osborne was a very successful computer company several decades ago, when computer technology was advancing by doubling every 2 years. It was twice as fast, twice as powerful, but at the same time, costs were halving every 2 years. They had a very healthy business, healthy order books, when they announced that they were working on the next generation of computer that was indeed twice as fast, twice as powerful, but would actually be cheaper. And that was the end of Osborne Computers. Almost overnight, their existing orders were cancelled. People simply stopped buying to wait for the new one. But without the sales, they no longer had enough money to finish off development and get on to manufacturing. They went bust. Now, the oil companies will not allow that to happen to them. So they will tell you all sorts. They'll tell you all is okay. They tell you there's plenty of oil. They tell you EVs aren't the answer, and they tell you that their products are. They'll tell you they're totally safe, they're not harming anyone, not the environment we all live in, or the planet we live on. And they will do that until they are totally, completely ready to launch their new Osborne computer. They're all singing, all dancing, really cheap, really safe, really reliable, whatever it is, entry into the market. Well, is this greenwashing? Yeah, in a way it is, yeah. They're not here doing this out of anything other than survival and profit. So in that sense it is. Also, even if they were, they couldn't tell you that. Well, are EVs the answer? No, I don't think so. Whoa, what? Dave takes it on, doesn't think EVs are the answer? Of course I don't. Just like I don't think that my current mobile phone is the best it's ever going to be. That's going to be something different next year, year after, and probably end up as a satellite phone. Nor is a heat pump the answer when I replace my central heating boiler. There'll be something better that comes along at some point in the future. But for me, none of these are interests. You see, I'll be long gone before anything replaces EVs. I'll be probably down there in a very warm place long before my heat pump, when I eventually get around to buying one, is replaced by something better. I am fully aware of life cycles. The ice car life cycle lasted for well over 100 years, far longer than even they expected. Industries don't normally. EVs will be here for decades to come, possibly even a century themselves, before they eventually are toppled, and they will be. And the oil giants also know all about long life cycles. They've been dealing with that ever since they came into existence. They now see the EV revolution as unstoppable. If they can't make the cars, they can't, no one else can, particularly Apple. They can certainly make both the fuel, in this case electricity, and also the delivery method, the EV chargers. This is what they've been doing for 100 years. They are the experts. This is their new goal, their target, their holy grail. And they actually have the money to be able to get there. Just two major obstacles stand in their way to a new world total domination. First of those, the renewable energy industry. It's not falling into line. You see, they're making things like solar PV panels, which are getting even cheaper, more powerful by the day. And the oil giants have not found a way to stop you from buying them and making your own electricity for free in direct competition. Just much cheaper. Specialist home batteries are also getting cheaper and more powerful and attractive, so you can store your excess electricity created during the day to use when you get back in the evening. Oh, and what a catastrophe if you actually use your own electricity generated for free to run your EV. Whoa, that's really not fair. They're going to complain about that. Well, the second is that others are already ahead of them in direct competition. I'm talking about the EV and renewable energy manufacturers. People like Tesla, BYD, CATL, Panasonic. They are miles ahead in grid-scale battery storage and EVs, and then they can simply bypass the oil giants. They buy the electricity from the cheap PV panels and wind turbines that others have purchased and operate. And they're sneaky because they wait till it's really cheap before they buy it up. Then, even more sneaky, they sell it back when it's in high demand and at a really high price. That is really underhand. Many companies can seriously undercut the prices the oil giants had forecast in their business plans. Oh, how dare they? So back to the burning question, are EVs the future? Well, I don't need to answer that because the oil giants have already answered it for you. Ice cars are now well and truly in the past. They are finished. They finished with them, and they're declining rapidly. EVs are in fact the present. They're here, they're taking over. Nothing can stop them. The future? Well, I suspect EVs are here to stay for a decade or two, maybe a century, I don't know. So I won't bank on being around to see what the future holds. Will the oil giants succeed? suspect not. I think they have seriously misjudged the market and their competitors in a desperate attempt to regain the world domination they've held for 100 years. But who am I to argue with the multi-billion oil giants? I will just sit back in my retirement, watch and enjoy. Well, thanks very much for watching this video. If you have enjoyed it, please click the like button. And if you would, please subscribe. It makes such a difference to us as a new channel. If you click the bell icon, the notification, you'll be notified the next time we launch a video. And a massive, massive, massive thank you, last but not least, to our Patreon members. This side of the business is growing dramatically. We've had our most successful month ever, and thank you so much for your support for the channel. I'm Dave.